Hey, what's up guys? I have a Strider SNG, all stonewashed. It has the new lockup and it does have lock rock a lot. Let's see if I can show you this. See the lock bar moving there. So what I need to do is take it apart and see why it's doing that and see if I can fix it, if carbidizing would help any. I'm not sure yet. I'll have to take it apart first. So I mean, if this is the new lock geometry, I can only imagine how bad the lock rock was on the old lock geometry. One of the problems I can see already though is the contact between the blade tang and the lock bar. You can see a gap. You see that the only contacting point between the lock bar and the blade tang is right there, just the very tip of it. See what I mean by looking at the blade tang. See the blade tang, the wear is only on that one spot of the tang, so it's only making contact on that very corner. Alright, it seems I learned something new every day. I was wondering why there was only a small amount of wear on the blade tang at the very bottom, why there was only such a small contact point between the lock bar and the blade tang. You can see there's that small wear point on the lock face on the titanium, so it only makes one small contact point right there. Whereas a Chris Reeves Sebenza or a Hinder, they utilize the entire width of the lock face for a contact point. You can see the wear there, consistent wear. It utilizes a larger surface area for contact. Now the reason Strider did this was to prevent blade rolling. It's a term used where they make the contact point between the tang and the lock face the farthest point from the pivot, and that prevents the blade from rolling, because if there's a contact point anywhere in the middle of the lock face, there is a chance for blade roll. It will allow it to do that a little bit, so they put the contact point the farthest from the pivot. Now technically both are going to be correct, and there is no right or wrong way to do it, but that still doesn't explain why there is a lock rock on this Strider. I'm thinking maybe there's not enough tension on the lock bar. I'm debating on whether I should carbidize it or send it into Strider, or try to readjust the angle on the lock face. See, the lock face isn't even flat. It should at least be flat though. And this is the new lockup, and the old lock face was radiused, and you can see this is flat, but it's still not 100% flat. It is slightly concave, very slightly. You can't really even see it, but you can feel it, and when you look at the reflections you can sort of see it's not flat when you reflect it in the light. And you can tell you can see the blue from the heat from grinding the lock face after it was stonewashed. See, it's kind of blue and burnt there. Alright, I decided I'm going to go ahead and carbidize the lock face and maybe try to bend the lock bar over to increase the tension. So here is a view of the starting point of the lock bar. See how far over it is? There's a view of the blade tang before carbidizing. See the blade tang is very unevenly machined. It's actually a convex. The lock face is actually convex. And that would explain maybe why the blade tang is slightly concave. It's like hollowed, and this is bowed out. That's what it looks like after carbidizing. I only carbidized the bottom half of where the contact point is. Did not carbidize the whole lock face. So I only carbidized from there down. And I had to get the lock face away from the frame because it was so close to the frame that you risk accidentally carbidizing the frame. So stuck this plastic piece in there with a clamp on the other side. So if you're trying to figure out how to keep that away from the frame while you're carbidizing, that's how you do it. So that's as far over as I could bend it. I didn't want to damage it. So I'm going to go ahead and put it together and see if carbidizing or bending it over has cured the problem. Alright, I just carbidized the lock bar, put everything together, and I was hoping for the best, but it actually came out worse. Now you can see I got my cut proof gloves on, cut resistant gloves I use for work. The lockup did go a little earlier. It was at about a good 50, a little over 50. I think it's at maybe 45, just a hair over. But I think it was already the best it was going to be. You know, titanium, when titanium and steel meet, it's a sticky surface. You know, like when you tighten a screw into a sabenza, it just locks in there because you got a harder material going into a softer material, and it just bites in. Well, that was the same case with the lock bar and the steel. You got titanium and steel, and that lock was as catchy as it was going to be. So now that I've carbidized the lock bar, you got two hard, slippery surfaces mating, and what does that equal? That equals a lot of sliding. And I almost cut my fingers off just testing the lock, and I'm just barely pressing on this, and it is moving over a lot. Look at that, I'm just barely moving this. And I almost cut my fingers off when I first did it because it just came undone like that. And I'm not touching the lock bar any. All I did was that, and it just almost cut my fingers off. See, it just slides right off now. So I'm going to send this knife in to Strider, and hopefully their customer service is awesome. I mean, I'll pay to get this fixed, no problem. I am the second owner, but it did come with lock rock to begin with, but carbidizing made it worse. So I'm gonna contact Strider. I'll send it in, see what they can do, and I'll let you guys know. See ya.